Live from the Panera Studios, it's the Reading with Robin show, brought to you each week by my friends at Panera Bread, where it's food as it should be. 100% of the food is 100% clean. I like to start my day with a warm mug of their delicious coffee. Sometimes I pick up an avocado, egg white, and spinach breakfast power sandwich. I love those. There's something for everyone on their extensive menu, whether an afternoon snack or dinner that you can eat in or order ahead. I love the order ahead option. It's quick and easy, and you run in and your order is waiting for you. Panera is also a great place to meet friends, have a business meeting, or a neighborhood book club. It's all at Panera Bread. And now, enjoy the show. Well, it's been quite a while since I last spoke with Amy Dickinson. The last time we spoke was about the Mighty Queens of Freeville. Is that possible, Amy?
I know. I kind of can't believe it. I can't believe it because we're in touch. Like,
right.
You know,
so it feels like you're around.
I know, and that's the beauty of social media. It's like we're all sort of connected and aware of one another. I actually love that.
I do too, because it's impossible otherwise to really keep track of everybody. So, but I was thinking when I sat down to write about this, I thought, wait, it's been a really long time. Amy Dickinson is also the author of the Ask Amy advice column, which I have so much to ask you about that. And I don't even know where to start. And a panelist on the comedy quiz show, Wait, Don't Tell Me on NPR. And your essays are everywhere. I love following you in her brand new memoir, Strangers Tend to Tell Me Things, of love, loss, and coming home. And I remember when you first posted about this, I was like over the top crazy because I love reading what you write. I love your sensibility, your humor, your compassion, and sheep. So
sheep.
Congratulations and welcome back to Reading with Robin, Amy Dickinson.
Thank you.
Very excited. I remember all those great photos you were posting, and I just, because who doesn't want to, I love a memoir.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I am a huge fan of memoir, only if I care about the person obviously writing it. And so I was very excited about this, and it is a gorgeous book and truly a great gift to give to a friend.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's a book to hand a friend. Julie Clam says, Strangers Tend to Tell Me Things is very funny, whip-smart, charming, and addictively engaging memoir. And I am a fan of Julie's as well. So everybody who loves this kind of this writing and this just storytelling and opening up, really, and because you're Ask Amy, what's it like to sort of turn the tables on yourself and tell your story?
Well, actually, one of the benefits for me personally of writing this book was first of all, I wanted to open up my own life to the millions of people that read my column. I feel like they're willing to be very vulnerable, and they're very open with me about what's going on in their lives. And I just felt like it was time for me to reveal myself to them and to other people. And, you know, I'm not a movie star or a famous singer. I'm really an ordinary person with a platform, frankly. And in all of my work, Robin, I really try to celebrate ordinary life, okay? The life that's lived by people like me. I grew up on a farm in a rural area. I have lived most of my life in a very small town. I was compelled to write about the choice I made, which is a choice that many, many, many people are making, to return home and help to take care of my mother at the end of her life.
Yeah.
And that was a heartbreaking several years for me. And there was nothing heroic about it. There was nothing overly dramatic about it other than the everyday drama of how are we going to do this thing, you know?
Yeah.
But that's the drama that any family member experiences, because during the course of one day, it's, okay, how am I going to pick up the kids and get to the nursing home and make the doctor's appointments and go to the school play, and how am I going to help everybody in my life feel celebrated and paid attention to? And this may be sort of a women's burden. I don't know, because I know so many men who are very caught up on this too.
Yes, I think it's just there's so many people to take care of, and I don't know if that was always the case, but there it does seem to be. I mean, I know in my own family, yes, my husband is very much a part of that, taking care of at this moment. So absolutely, and maybe it depends on the person, but it does feel like it's something that women have been tasked with, the caretaker and all of that.
It's the story of the sandwich generation.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
We are the very essence of our sandwich status. I mean, the joy for us of having children and having our parents. I mean, my grandparents died when I was a little kid. I didn't even know them really.
Yeah.
But our parents are staying at the party longer.
Yeah,
and
I mean, if you're right, if you're lucky, it's a whole different balancing act of taking care of both ends of it. Yeah, absolutely.
And not to put too fine a point on it, but my grandparents were married and they took care of each other at the end.
Wow.
And my mother, like half of our population, my mother was not married. And so her children, my sisters and I, took care of her. But my mother never had to engage in the sort of very, very long-term caretaking of either of her parents.
Yeah. Wow,
yeah.
Right. It depends on how it sort of works out. And you talk about your small town, and I love that your address is Amy Dickinson, Box 3.
Box 3, Freeville, New York.
Freeville, New York, with the zip code. I just think that is just reading this book, and I went to school in Binghamton, and so I'm very familiar
kidding.
with. Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes. So Binghamton, Ithaca, Syracuse, and all of that. But I guess I was never in Freeville, but I just remember when we talked about the Mighty Queens and thinking, I guess I didn't connect where the town was maybe at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Headed up for graduation at Syracuse in May, so I feel like I should know where this is, and just I can imagine your Main Street. Just even thinking about what Main Street means and reading reading in the book, and I'm on the phone with Amy Dickinson, and we're talking about her brand new memoir, Strangers Tend to Tell Me Things. Reading about the proximity of your family members and where your mother lived and the house and the importance of home and watching, your relative across the way or whatever. I mean, just that whole idea of being with your family and taking care of everybody just struck such a strong chord with me. Really did.
Well, thank you. And let me expand on Main Street. Main Street is both a concept in American life, and for me, and I think for a lot of people in small towns, it's a reality. And recently, you talked about sort of watching out for family members who live nearby. Recently, I was at church and in my little town, and we were reminiscing about a neighbor, and the across the street neighbor said, well, we watched for her porch light. We always respected her privacy, but we watched for her porch light, and she knew it. And one night when that porch light did not go on, we ran over, and she was on the floor.
Wow.
And we said to her, oh, my God, why didn't you call? Why didn't you call us? And she said, I knew you would come over.
Wow.
I mean, that's what I'm
just
talking about.
Just taking care of each other and really watching out and having a sense of what's going on. There's a huge comfort in that. And you came back to Freeville, like you said, to take care of your mother, and you've stayed and you got remarried. And I mean, you have quite a story going on there. And that's such a change, really. But coming back to what feels comfortable and what is, I mean, it just, in reading about your town and growing up, it just sounds so idyllic to me. There's just something, and writing from there and doing your Ask Amy column from there.
Well, I think it does sound idyllic, and it's funny because I take such pains in my writing to never describe Freeville as an idyllic place because I lived on Block Island for a while, which really was idyllic for me. Sure. I have spent a lot of time on the shore of Rhode Island and Massachusetts, and there's some idyllic stuff going on. That is not my deal, but what is idyllic is not so much the setting as much as the sort of the concepts that are called up and just the real life practices of people who are neighbors without ever intruding, frankly, but they are watching. Another thing about growing up in a small place, whether it's your block in Washington Heights or Brooklyn or Boston, because anyone who lives in close proximity to other people, you have a witness. And
right.
In my case, because my parents grew up in the same place, and my grandparents grew up in the same place where I grew up, there is this sense of being known, and that you don't have to. Somebody asked me recently, "Oh, what's it like being a celebrity back in your hometown?" And my answer, I know, I love that. But my answer to that is, the thing about growing up in a small place is you always feel like a celebrity, or I always felt like a celebrity. But the beauty is I come back as somebody who is frankly recognized in airports. I come back to my hometown, and what do they do?
No
They're
big
like,
deal, right?
You're
right.
not such a big deal. Don't get big for your britches, young lady. And so
exactly. They'll tell you what's going on, and it is when, like you say, always feeling like a celebrity in your small town because everybody knows you, they know your history, and so you come at somebody, and I know you wrote about that in this book, of coming at a situation from the same place. So there's already an understanding of what somebody's feeling, or what, that's really comforting right there.
Well, especially when I went through sort of the final journey with my mother, with her illness and death, and it was very protracted, and my grief was incredibly intense. But like I write about how I go into the store, and the guy who owns the store, well, after his dad, the guy who's now running the store is somebody that my husband and I went to high school with,
Yeah.
and he's been through some stuff. And recently, we had another death in the family, and I went into the store, and this man, Mike, sort of pulled me aside, and he said, I want you to know that I didn't attend the funeral because I was here working because so many of my employees wanted to go.
Oh, wow. And he wanted you to know that. Wow.
It just it didn't break my heart. It made my heart. I just,
wow.
And he was concerned that I would feel like his absence was a problem or something. But really, it's just about generosity.
It's such a caring community, and just sort of doing the right thing. And I think in a lot of spaces that isn't really the case anymore, and people, it would seem anyway, that people have sort of lost their way in that. And there are just so many elements of this book and your storytelling. I love following you on Twitter or following Facebook posts, and your sensibility and humor have always just felt so familiar to me. So and in reading your columns, and you've been writing that column since Ann Landers died, right?
Since 2003. Yeah. It's been a while.
I grew up. I know. All of a sudden, 2003 seems like a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I'm chatting with Amy Dickinson. You can find her at amydickinson.com. You can find her at Asking Amy on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, all the usual places. But go to amydickinson.com, and you can get to all of her other hiding spots. But I grew up on Ann Landers. That was. When I would get the Long Island Newsday, that was my paper. I would check the Yankee scores, and I would check Ann Landers. Oh, and my horoscope. But I loved reading those questions. You would always read them in hopes, certainly, of finding something that you could take away from it, or, and now you get your letters, you get letters, you get tweets, you get Facebook messages, you get email. How do you sort through this, and what is that like? Just choosing questions that will speak to everybody.
Well, actually, Robin, I think the way you just phrased that is it's the first time anybody has asked me about it and put it quite like that, because that's my answer. It is it's an editorial. Honestly, I think that going through the mail and choosing is the most important work that I do in terms of the column. Because as you probably discern, if I choose the right letter, the answer will write itself, honestly.
Sure.
And I look for, and it's like any other editorial process. It's a process of balancing. I try to leaven out each column with sort of a lead letter and a secondary letter, and I try to vary the tone of the column throughout the week. Honestly, most people would never recognize this, but I try to match it up to the day of the week when it's supposed to run.
Wow.
So, for instance, on a Friday, I'll try to run things that are a little more like recreational. Sundays, I do receive a lot of letters about spirituality and religious or faith practices or atheism, which I love, and I tend to run those on Sundays. So there's some discernment there, but I spend a ton of time going through the queries. I don't call it mail anymore. It's because, as you said,
I can't even imagine.
It just comes in every. I almost said orifice, but I don't mean that.
Well, you did say it.
Yeah, but I love that. Hey, if somebody wants to reduce a query to a tweet-sized, bite-sized question, I'm totally all about it.
Sure. I'm surprised they're not skywriting over your house since they can find you on Main Street in Freeville, because the amount of, and do you ever think of somebody that their letter you've answered, and then maybe what's happening, or do people keep in touch after that, or somebody you've worried about maybe?
Here's what I do, and just so you know, like if you see a letter in my column that seems really like alarming, timely, or whatever, you should know that I've already responded to that person privately. Like I would never, let somebody hang. And I respond to a lot of people privately whose queries I never run because they're too personal, private, alarming, or whatever. And people do get back to me. It's more rare. I wish it happened more often, where somebody had said, like, oh, I'm like sleepless in Seattle, and I'm getting back to you to let you know that I'm getting a great night's sleep. That doesn't happen that often. But, of course, I do hear from so many other readers who are like, oh, that's me. I share that. Oh, my God, I'm going to try that.
And that's what you want. So you're helping so many people at once. Yeah, I think Sleepless in Seattle, and of course I always think of the great Brady Bunch episode where the kids think that each parent wrote the letter. Do you remember Harried and Hopeless? I don't know if you remember that.
And I actually get that a lot, where people think, oh, my sister-in-law, like I recognize my sister-in-law.
Oh, sure.
And they will often ask me to out someone, and I always say very truthfully, I have no idea who that was. I do.
Sure, and it doesn't matter, really. And if you're that curious, chances are you have some work to do on something.
Yeah, exactly.
So go revisit that part. But I think I just found the whole idea of writing a letter and searching for some help it's just an interesting thing, sitting down and asking, and then, of course, there's that delay of waiting, and so how urgent is the question. I love the advice column. I love reading your column. It's really do, and I always, you want to see how much things change and how much they really just don't. Those are the things.
Yeah, and I was a little kid growing up on a isolated dairy farm in the middle of nowhere, and I read Ann Landers, and I learned a lot from Ann Landers.
Oh, sure.
And one of the things that readers sometimes criticize me for is like, oh, Amy, your answers are so in-depth. I'm like, really? That's a problem?
That's what you hear? I can only, you're opening yourself up to look at what, everyone has something to say, right?
Yeah.
So now you're right, and you're writing advice, because I know I was reading in your book, and with the best title ever, Strangers Tend to Tell Me Things. I just love that title. that people will have criticisms and those sorts of, everybody's a critic, right? Everyone. So it's too in-depth. You're trying too hard to help really get to
like,
the heart of it.
Your answers are so in depth because it's like they're remembering Ann Landers. Some of her most famous answers were like, wake up and smell the coffee,
exactly,
or dump the bomb, or whatever. And I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Wow.
You know, that was another person, another time.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't do that.
That's funny. And when you do meet people out and about, and you know, if somebody were to ask you, you know, who you are, what you do, or
however
that comes up, so then everyone has a story. Is that idea?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a magnet for that, too. I just say
Right.
hello to somebody, and somehow I get a story. So that was probably one of the reasons I also connected so deeply to the title. But this is what you do. So
Right.
Do you ever shut it off, or is it impossible like a psychic?
Well, I will tell you this. I recently, and this is unprecedented, so this is what I'm telling you. I recently missed a flight where I was at the gate,
oh my goodness,
ready to go.
Aye.
And I missed my flight because I was so engaged in conversation with a person who had just started asking me stuff.
Wow.
And I mean, that's on me, right?
It wasn't totally, but yeah, you were doing God's work. What could you do? So you were there.
It just speaks to my level of engagement with people, and
Sure.
And that's a good thing.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
It became a real burden when I worked in the newsroom at the Chicago Tribune because so many colleagues were coming to me that it was very time consuming, but it was also burdensome from a colleague. Like,
right.
You want to answer deeply personal, intimate questions from somebody you will never see again. That's
absolutely
cool.
You don't want to be seeing them at the water cooler. Plus, they know you're on deadline.
Exactly. So and I didn't know what to do. So what I started doing was, if it was sort of a petty type question, I would say, "Oh, that sounds great. Like you should submit that to my column. I would love to run that. Like, get out of here."
Sure, actually, right. Throw it right on the other side. Lob it back.
Yeah, like, go ahead. And then otherwise, if it was super serious, I was consulting with, believe it or not, the referring therapist at Northwestern Hospital, which is a huge teaching hospital, which was great. And so he gave me permission to refer people to him, and then he would. And, and I think that's a great response, is like,
sure.
Look, here's a phone number. Please, please, please call this
Absolutely.
person. He will find somebody for you to talk to.
Yeah, because really, I mean,
and now get out of my office. No.
Right. Get me that cup of coffee and leave. Well,
yeah.
Because so what happened? Did they reroute you, or did somebody find like, wow, this was so nice of Amy to hang out and help this woman or man and get you on another flight, or was it a whole to-do?
Oh, Robin, I'll tell you what I did. I ran to the nearest gate like an idiot, like sweating, crying, and I threw myself on her mercy. This gate agent took one look at me, and she was like, "Honey, I'm going to hook you up." And she rooted me. But here's what she said. She's like, "Okay, the doors close on this flight in 10 minutes, and you are going to have to book it." And I love that because she got me out of her hair immediately, and I made it to I have found that throwing myself on the mercy and just asking.
Yes, instead of making stuff up and really.
No,
people,
I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it's happened. I did this. And, the two times when I've really dealt extensively with sort of route issues and missing flights and all the rest, both times that were when it's not your fault, the airline, they reroute you or whatever. But two times it's been my fault. And both times I've gone up to a gate agent and I have said, this is completely my fault. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to tell you.
Right.
And they're like,
it's refreshing
okay.
Instead of the whole story. Wow, right. She's coming at me with the truth. We haven't seen this one before. Let's just help Amy out.
Plus,
I know. Sometimes
this
that
woman
really
is like sobbing. Oh my God,
That is good advice. Sometimes it seems the least obvious route to go, and there's a real convoluted way of getting it out. And then, people really understand that, and I think that's at the essence of this book. There's just so much to connect with, and again, such a beautiful gift to give to anybody in your life, really. Strangers Tend to Tell Me Things. Amy Dickinson's brand new memoir, a memoir of loss. I keep wanting to say loss before love. Why is that?
Maybe we mistitled it,
I am pretty good at this stuff. I don't know. No. That did a great job. A memoir of love, loss, and coming home. And there are so many pearls in this book, and I love that you talk about keeping secrets. So you don't keep your own, but you keep others. So you'll tell your story. You're like an open book kind of in that way, right?
Yeah, as long as I get to close it again.
Right.
But also, my life in the last few years has involved sort of every major life event touchstone you could have. I fell in love as like this elderly, middle-aged, elder, and my husband and I.
Wait, you're not an elder.
Well, I feel like it. I feel like it.
Okay, because you don't sound like one.
No, I mean, I'm definitely in late middle age, and I engaged in this like whirlwind romance with somebody I had known, the Lifetime movie version, like I had known him my whole life. I then, stepped into a family full of children, daughter. Yeah. I acquired all these stepchildren, and navigating all of that has been really tricky, and it's not always pretty. It doesn't always go really smoothly. But spoiler alert, I have the happiest ending, I can imagine, honestly, for somebody like me.
It's really amazing, though, really. Could you have ever imagined that? So you come home, you fell in love with somebody that you've known, and you have all these, like, if you look at your life, if you do like a flash back and forth, think, like, you don't ever see things coming, and sort of being open to that and not knowing what's ever around the corner. It's amazing.
And also just feeling like I have lived my life according to, my own, like, values and what I want, and feeling like even if I hadn't fallen in love or whatever, moving home was the right thing for me to do, and I'm really glad I did it. And everything else is just like icing on the cake.
Wow. Well, I hope you have a lot of icing for a very long time. And I love the way you end this book. And you just said no spoiler alert, so I can share, but you talk about how to be a family. And you sort of just, the way you end the book, this last paragraph to me, and people will have to buy it to know what it is. It's Strangers Tend to Tell Me Things. It's Amy Dickinson's gorgeous memoir. Find her at amydickinson.com, a memoir of love, loss, and coming home. But, yeah, this final paragraph, you just wrap it up. It is just gorgeous, heartfelt, and full of inner peace, joy. And I love it. And it really makes you think and want to go home, want to go home. And so much more to talk about, but people can get it. And before I let you go, what are you reading on your, so you're on tour now. I love the Politics and Prose picture. I love that bookstore in D.C. I don't know if you picked anything up while you were there, but what's on the top of your pile?
Well, Robin, I love the question.
Have a second to relax. Yeah.
I have been reading through the Neapolitan trilogy.
Ah, okay. Good one.
And I don't read a lot of fiction because of my work. I read a lot of nonfiction. And I have to say I've been very, very caught up in it. I was a little surprised that this sort of brought me in so deeply. But, yeah, I'm in it.
There you're in it. I haven't read them yet, but that's what I've heard. And it's one of my favorite things. I'm just like a nosy book pusher and asker. I just have to know what everybody's reading. So everybody should be reading this. Strangers Tend to Tell Me Things. I love this book. And follow Amy's column like you do anyway. Find her on Twitter and in Freeville and every place else. Where's the next stop on your tour?
I'm headed to New Orleans for the Tennessee Williams Festival this weekend. And
how
it's
fabulous.
Wonderful. I'm really excited.
Enjoy, and the aforementioned Block Island, of course, is in my state here in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And at some point, we're getting you to come here.
Definitely.
Have to make that happen because I will nudge you until the end. And enjoy, and all the best with this. Strangers Tend to Tell Me Things. Amy, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robin.